I woke up on a Tuesday morning to the smell of coffee my wife always made and the sound of my phone buzzing off the nightstand. I almost didn't answer it. I remember that detail clearly, because if I had ignored it, I might never have found out the truth in time. It was my accountant, Mr. Delgado. His voice was shaking. "Nathan," he said, "I need you to come to the office right now. There's something wrong with your accounts." I laughed at first. I told him I'd just checked my balance the night before. Everything was fine. I was a 52-year-old man who built a construction supply company from nothing, and I trusted my numbers the way other men trust their reflection in the mirror. "Nathan," he said again, slower this time, like he was trying to soften a blow he didn't know how to deliver. "According to the state records, you're dead." I stood in my kitchen holding that phone, staring at my own hand like it belonged to someone else. My wife, Carol, walked in behind me, still in her robe, and asked what was wrong. I couldn't answer her. I just handed her the phone. 2 hours later, I was standing in front of a clerk at the county records office, holding my driver's license up like evidence in a trial. She kept looking at her screen, then at me, then back at her screen. "Sir," she said, "I'm sorry, but our system shows a death certificate was filed for you 11 days ago." 11 days. I tried to remember what I'd been doing 11 days ago. A regular Friday, nothing unusual, no hospital visit, no accident, nothing. "Who filed it?" I asked. She hesitated, then turned the monitor toward me. The name on the form nearly stopped my heart for real. It was my own son. I stared at that name until the letters stopped making sense. Marcus, my son, my only child. "There has to be a mistake," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I need a copy of that certificate." The clerk printed it out with shaking hands, like she could sense this wasn't a clerical error anymore. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was Marcus's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. I taught him how to write his own name at our kitchen table when he was 6 years old. Carol grabbed my arm in the parking lot. "Nathan, breathe. We'll call him right now. There's an explanation." I called. It went straight to voicemail. We drove to his apartment across town, the same one I helped him rent 2 years ago after his divorce. I remember the drive felt endless, every red light an insult. Carol kept saying his name like a prayer. I kept picturing him as a boy, riding on my shoulders at the county fair, laughing so hard he almost fell. Marcus didn't answer the door, but his neighbor, an older woman named Dot, who always fed the stray cats on the stoop, told us he'd moved out 3 days earlier, no forwarding address. That's when Delgado called again. "Nathan," he said, "I pulled the full file. It's not just the death certificate. There's a notarized will, filed the same day. Everything you own, the company, the house, the accounts, it's all been transferred already." I felt the ground tilt under me. "Transferred to who?" I asked, though some sick part of me already knew the answer before he said it. "Your son," Delgado said, "and someone named Renee Ashford. Do you know that name?" I didn't. Not yet. But I would learn her name meant everything. I sat in my truck outside Marcus's empty apartment for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel. Renee Ashford. I said the name out loud, testing it, like maybe saying it enough times would make it familiar. Nothing came. Carol was the one who remembered first. "Nathan," she said quietly, "isn't that the name of the woman Marcus started dating last year, the one he never brought around?" It hit me slow, like cold water rising past my ankles before it reaches my chest. Marcus had mentioned a woman once, briefly at Thanksgiving. He'd gotten cagey when I asked questions. I remember it was strange, but I let it go. He was a grown man. I trusted him to make his own choices. I trusted him. That thought kept circling back like a wound I couldn't stop touching. Delgado met us at his office an hour later, and he looked like a man carrying bad news he didn't want to hand over. He spread the documents across his desk. My signature was on the will, not a bad forgery either. Someone had studied my handwriting long enough to get it that close. The death certificate lists cause of death as a heart attack at Mercy General,
11 days ago. I've never set foot in Mercy General, I said. I know, Delgado said, which means somebody paid someone inside that hospital to make this look real. Carol's hand found mine on the desk. It was cold. Nathan, she whispered, if the world thinks you're dead and everything you own now belongs to Marcus and this woman, what happens to us? What happens when they find out you're still alive? I didn't have an answer, but I already knew one thing for certain. Somebody wanted me gone, and my own son had helped him do it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Carol, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above me, thinking about every conversation with Marcus over the last year, looking for the moment I missed, the moment where my son became a stranger. It came back to me in pieces. 6 months ago, Marcus asked to review the company's ownership structure. He said it was for tax purposes, something about restructuring to protect the business. I trusted him. I gave him access to files I should have guarded closer. He was my son. I built that company so he'd have something solid to stand on after his divorce nearly broke him. 3 months ago, Marcus asked me to sign what he called a power of attorney update in case anything ever happened to me while I traveled for supplier meetings. I remember Carol being uneasy about it. I told her she was overreacting. Marcus was helping me plan ahead. That's what good sons did. I hadn't read every line of that document carefully enough.
The next morning, Delgado tracked down a name at Mercy General, a records administrator named Philip Cho, who'd recently paid off a mountain of gambling debt in one lump sum. Delgado said it quietly, like he already knew where this was heading. Somebody bought that death certificate, Nathan. Cho's the weak link. If we push him, he might talk. Carol wanted to call the police immediately. Part of me wanted that too, but another part of me, the part that still loved my son despite everything, needed to hear it from Marcus's own mouth first. I needed to know if he truly planned this, or if Renee Ashford had led him somewhere he never meant to go. I told Delgado to hold off on the police for 48 hours. I needed to find my son before he disappeared for good. We found Philip Cho before we found Marcus. Delgado tracked him to a bar off Route 9, the kind of place with flickering neon and a jukebox stuck on the same 3 songs. Cho was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with the hollow look of a man who hadn't slept right in weeks. Guilt does that to a face. I sat down across from him before he even noticed me, and when he looked up and realized who I was, the color drained out of him like someone had pulled a plug. "You're supposed to be dead," he whispered. "Funny," I said. I was about to say the same thing about my future. He wanted to run. I could see it in his knees, the way they angled toward the door. But Carol stood behind him, blocking the aisle, and something in her face must have convinced him running wasn't an option tonight. It took 20 minutes and a promise that I wouldn't press charges if he told the truth. Cho folded fast. Some men aren't built for the weight of what they've done. He said a woman named Renee Ashford paid him $30,000 in cash to falsify my death certificate. She told him it was a family estate matter, nothing illegal, just paperwork moving faster than the law allowed. He said Marcus was there the day she handed over the money, sitting right beside her, not saying a word, not stopping her. He didn't look surprised, Cho said. He looked like he already knew exactly what she was going to do. That detail sat in my chest like a stone. Not shocked, not resistant. My son had simply let it happen. Carol asked the question I couldn't make myself ask. "Do you know where they are now?" Cho hesitated, then gave us an address on the edge of town, a rental house, Renee's name on the lease. I stood up from that booth feeling something harden inside me that hadn't been there that morning. I was done being the grieving father, hoping for an innocent explanation. I was ready to face my son. The house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place built for people starting over, porch light on,
a single car in the driveway that wasn't Marcus's. I told Carol to wait in the truck. She refused. I didn't have the strength left to argue. I knocked. Footsteps. The door opened, and there she was, Renee Ashford, in person for the first time. She was maybe 40, sharp-featured, dressed like she'd been expecting important company. Her smile died the second she saw my face. "That's not possible," she said, her voice barely a breath. "Neither was my heart attack, and yet here we both are." She tried to shut the door. I put my hand against it, not hard, just firm enough to say I wasn't leaving. Behind her, in the hallway, I saw him, Marcus. He looked thinner than I remembered, older around the eyes. For 1 second, just one, I saw something flicker across his face that looked like relief, like some small part of him was glad I was alive. Then it vanished, replaced by something colder. "Dad, you weren't supposed to find out this way." "Find out what way, Marcus? That my own son signed papers saying I was dead?" He didn't answer right away. Renee stepped between us, her voice sharp now, controlling. "Marcus, don't say anything. Not without your lawyer telling him what to say," I cut in. "How long have you been planning this?" The silence that followed told me more than words could have. Carol's hand tightened around my arm. "Marcus," she said softly, "just tell him the truth, please."
He looked at his mother, then at me, and for the first time, his composure cracked completely. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. "She said no one would get hurt. She said you'd never even know." I stood on that porch staring at my son, waiting for him to say something that would make any of this make sense. Instead, Renee stepped forward, her hand landing on his shoulder like she was steadying a nervous horse. "Marcus, go inside," she said. "Let me handle this." He didn't move. For a moment, I thought maybe there was still a fight left in him, some piece of the boy I raised who wouldn't just stand there and let a stranger speak for him. But he stepped back into the shadow of the hallway, and something in me broke a little watching him do it. "You don't get to handle this," I said to Renee. "Not on my porch, not with my son." "Your son," she said, "came to me 8 months ago, not the other way around." That stopped me cold. He was drowning in debt from his divorce, behind on payments for a business loan you didn't even know he'd taken out against your company's name. He needed a way out, and he was too afraid to come to you. I turned to Marcus. "Is that true?" His silence answered before he did. "I took a loan," he said, voice cracking, "using company collateral. I thought I could pay it back before you noticed. Then the payments got worse. I panicked." "So your solution was to kill me on paper and steal everything I built?" "It wasn't supposed to be permanent," he said. "Renee said we'd transfer things quietly, cover the debt, and then quietly reverse it, report a mistake, fix the records. No one would know." "No one would know I was declared dead?" My voice rose beside myself. "Marcus, I have a heart condition. Do you understand what a shock like that could have done to me?" He flinched like I'd struck him. Behind him, in the dim hallway light, I saw a manila folder sitting open on a side table. Bank statements, wire transfers, numbers far larger than any loan. This wasn't about covering a debt anymore. I pushed past Renee before she could stop me and picked up that folder off the table. My hands were steadier than they had any right to be. Carol stood in the doorway, watching me flip through pages that told a story far uglier than the one Marcus had just given me. Wire transfers, 4 of them, each one larger than the last, not to cover a business loan, not close to it.
$2.3 million moved out of my company accounts over the past 6 weeks to an offshore account under a name I didn't recognize, Ashford Holdings, LLC. Marcus, I held the folder up so he could see it. This is not 8 months of desperation. This is a plan. He stared at the papers like he was seeing them for the first time too. Maybe he was. I watched his face shift from confusion to something darker, something aimed at Renee instead of me. "What is this?" he asked her. "You said the transfers were for the debt consolidation. You said what you needed to hear," Renee replied, and her voice had lost every trace of warmth now. Cold, flat, business. "Necessary," I repeated. "You mean theft. You mean fraud. You mean staging my death to steal my company while my son stood by and let it happen?" Marcus's hands were shaking. "Renee, tell him the truth. Tell him this wasn't the plan." She turned toward the door instead, calm as anything, reaching for her car keys off a side table. "I don't owe explanations to a dead man." Carol stepped directly into her path. "You're going to want to reconsider that because the police are already on their way." Renee's face went white. I hadn't called them. Carol had, the moment we walked up that driveway. Renee's keys hit the floor. For the first time I'd met her, I saw something crack behind that composed mask. Real fear, sharp and sudden. "You're bluffing," she said. "Try me," Carol answered, and I'd never loved her more in that moment, standing in that doorway like she was made of iron. Marcus looked between all of us, and something in him seemed to finally give way. Not fear of getting caught, something closer to relief, like a man setting down a weight he'd carried too long alone. "Dad," he said, "I have more. Emails, everything she had me sign. I kept copies, just in case, because part of me always knew this was going to fall apart." "You kept copies?" she said. "I'm not you," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. I couldn't sleep, knowing what we did to him. I told myself I'd fix it before it went too far. I told myself I'd bring the money back. "That's why you disappeared from your apartment," I understood, in a slow wave. "You were running from her, not from me."
He nodded, tears finally breaking loose. "I moved out 3 days ago. I was scared of what she'd do if I backed out. I didn't know how to come to you and admit what I'd done. I thought you'd never forgive me." Red and blue lights swept across the front of the house before he could say anything else. 2 patrol cars pulled up along the curb. Renee lunged for the back door. She didn't make it past the kitchen before an officer caught her arm and turned her around. Marcus didn't run. He stood there, in front of me, waiting for whatever judgment I had left to give him. "Dad," he said, "I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to know I never wanted you dead. I just wanted a way out that didn't feel like drowning." I looked at my son, in handcuffs beside a woman who'd used him like a tool, and felt something I didn't expect. Not just anger, grief. The house emptied out fast after that. Officers led Renee to one patrol car, still hissing about lawyers and rights, while another officer stood with Marcus near the porch steps, waiting on instructions from a detective who'd arrived a few minutes later. Detective Ruiz was a quiet, careful woman who listened more than she talked. She took the folder from my hands, bagged it as evidence, and asked me the question I'd been dreading since I first saw my son's signature on that death certificate. "Mr. Whitfield, do you want to press charges against your son?" Marcus didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the ground, like a man already sentencing himself. I thought about the boy who used to wait by the window for me to come home from work. I thought about the man he'd become, drowning in debt and shame, too afraid to ask his own father for help. And I thought about the folder full of proof he'd kept hidden, proof that could have stayed buried forever if he'd wanted it to. He kept records, I said slowly. He was building a way to stop this. That has to count for something. Ruiz studied me for a long moment. It can factor into cooperation. That's a conversation for the DA. But the fraud charges against Ashford are solid. Wire transfers, falsified documents, bribery of a hospital employee. She's not walking away from this. And Marcus? Carol asked. It depends on what he's willing to testify to and how much he actually took versus how much he tried to return. Marcus finally looked up at me. His eyes were red, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll tell them everything, he said. All of it. I don't want protection anymore. I just want to stop lying. I felt something in my chest loosen, just slightly. Not forgiveness yet, not trust, but maybe the first small crack of a door that hadn't fully closed. The weeks that followed felt like living in someone else's life. Reversing a death certificate, I learned, is somehow harder than filing one. I sat across from clerks and lawyers and insurance representatives who looked at me like I was a ghost filling out paperwork to become human again. Delgado worked tirelessly to freeze what remained of the stolen funds. Most of the $2.3 million was recovered from the offshore account, thanks to the documentation Marcus handed over willingly, without hesitation, without a lawyer softening his words first. Renee Ashford was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and bribery of a public employee. Philip Cho testified against her in exchange for a reduced sentence of his own. Delgado told me later that investigators found this wasn't her first attempt at something like this, just the first time she'd gotten far enough to nearly succeed. Marcus's case moved slower. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Ellis Fournier, argued that his full cooperation, the money he'd tried to return, and the evidence he provided were signs of genuine remorse, not just fear of consequences. The DA offered a plea deal, restitution, probation, and mandatory financial counseling in exchange for his testimony against Renee. I sat in that courtroom the day he took the deal. He turned around once, just briefly, searching the gallery until he found my face. I didn't smile. I didn't look away either. Carol squeezed my hand throughout the whole hearing, the way she'd squeezed it through every hard year of our marriage. That night, at home, she asked me the question I'd been avoiding since the moment I found out I was legally dead. "Nathan," she said quietly, "can you ever forgive him?" I looked out the window at the porch light glowing over an empty driveway, and for the first time, I let myself imagine what forgiveness might actually look like. I didn't answer Carol that night. Some questions need time before they're ready to be answered honestly. It took 3 months before I agreed to see Marcus outside a courtroom. We met at a small diner off Route 12, neutral ground, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that never quite got cold. He was thinner still, but there was something steadier in his eyes now, like a man who'd finally stopped running from himself. "I know I'm not asking you to forgive me today," he said before I'd even sat down. "I just wanted you to know I'm doing the counseling. I'm paying back what I can, even after restitution. I got a job at a hardware store in Millbrook. Nothing fancy, but it's honest." I studied my son across that table, searching for the boy who used to ride on my shoulders at the county fair, and found pieces of him still there, buried under the wreckage of bad choices and worse fear. "You could have come to me," I said, 8 months ago, before any of this started." "I know," he said. "I was ashamed. I thought needing help made me a failure. I thought you'd see me differently." "I would have," I admitted. "I would have seen a son struggling, not a stranger capable of this." He nodded, tears threatening but not falling.
I'm trying to become someone you could see that way again. I didn't offer him forgiveness that day, but I offered him something almost as important, a second cup of coffee and a promise to meet again next month. Standing in my driveway that evening, watching the sun go down over the house I'd built with my own hands, I understood something I hadn't before. Family isn't broken by a single failure. It's broken by silence, by shame, by fear that keeps people from asking for help before desperation makes the choice for them. I was legally alive again, my name restored, my accounts corrected, but the real resurrection wasn't on any government form. It was learning, slowly, painfully, how to let my son come home.